Hi, Leslie Giuliani here. When I have no specific idea what to do in the studio, I like to make encaustic monotype / paintings. They are a little bit printmaking and a little bit painting, and these processes allow me to work fluidly between the two. I usually start with making backgrounds just for fun. They are low stakes and give me a chance to experiment without making difficult decisions. Sometimes I make them and just pile them up to be used for another day when I have something particular that I want to say via imagery. Because encaustic hardens right up, they are ready to go almost immediately. I usually work on Encaustiflex because it can absorb so many layers of paint and can pick up fine details. But Japanese paper is wonderful too and can give beautiful luminous effects. To get started, I like to use dry media to create some noise that will be mostly hidden, but will add some pentimenti or furtive indistinct marks that will draw a viewer into the piece to look more deeply. It also loosens me up like exercise. You can make random marks, look at an object or illustration and draw it without looking at the paper, or any number of prompts can work. I work with graphite, woodies, Stabilo pencils, art graph, and marabou. Some of these are water soluble. You need to dry it before you continue with wax. I just leave it on the palette. It dries pretty fast. You can use your heat gun, but watch out for singeing or melting. Not good. Encaustiflex is good too, around 400 degrees. Paper is paper, and we know about that. I am working on a 16-inch by 16-inch R&F heated palette. It gives me a lot of room to work and has a great brush rest. By working directly on the palette, there is no fusing necessary. The paint is always being reheated, so you can work freely and fluidly. Next, I add color. I love working with R&F's chromatic whites, or chromatic whites I mix up myself. A chromatic white is a color that can act as a white because of its lightness, but has the interest of a color and is not over bright value-wise when next to other colors. Their opacity obscures my marks enough to keep my monotype building up without too much visual confusion. They will allow me to add even more visual interest later. If you choose a transparent color for your next color, your marks will just show more. If you like the luminous effect of transparent pigments, hey, go for it. We're just playing around. We all have dirty brushes hanging around and mean to clean them, soon. I like to keep a few to add some incidental tones to my opaque layer. Something random, whatever my brushes have to offer. Now it's time to add some surface embellishment. There are tons of ways to add more interest before you decide on an image or focus. You can draw or paint directly on the palette with encaustic and print. This is a classic monotype. You can use a variety of texture making tools to make your marks. I like silicone tools because they are heat resistant and do not scratch the palette. Do not use sharp metal tools. They do scratch and could make a permanent mark in all subsequent monotypes. Stencils made from Duralar are heat-proof and can be laid right on the palette. I make my own using a digital cutter. I like to use them with pan pastels. I like to do this off the palette because I get a sharper edge. Then I fuse them, but just laying them back on the palette. You can also paint into these stencils with Encaustic. Just wipe the paint off the stencil while it is on the heated palette to clean it. Pan pastels can also be used to gently tone a piece. Working directly on the palette using Encaustiflex allows you to use pigment sticks or oil paint simultaneously with Encaustic because it really soaks up the paint and the heated palette dries the oil paint very fast. Do not put the oil paint or pigment stick directly on the palette. It will stain it. I do keep the oil paint relatively thin. Here I'm using printing rollers meant for pottery that I got from Bailey's Ceramic Supply that happens to be right across the tracks from the R&F factory in Kingston, New York. They have lots of tools that are easily repurposed for encaustic and printmaking. I roll out a thin layer of pigment stick, which works great for printmaking due to its slight wax content. I roll and let dry on the palette for a few minutes to stabilize the marks. You can use gel press plates with pigment sticks right on top of the palette. Clean with mineral oil. Now it's time to work off the heat. Transfer sheets or Surround paper can give a gritty line, or you can make tiny indistinct drawings. To make transfer paper, mix dry pigment, you can find non-toxic varieties or wear a mask, please, with denatured alcohol. Paint this pigment alcohol mix onto copy paper, let it dry, and there you go. There is no binder in the pigment since the alcohol evaporates. The powder is easily coaxed onto another surface. Lay the piece back on the palette to fuse. You can also use this time to go back in with other dry drawing media. You can add Xerox laser transfers at the end. Be sure the surface is completely coated in wax. Any dry areas will not hold the transfer. A note of caution, if you put the transfer on the heat, it may deform. I've told my students this, and some do it anyway without disastrous results, but I feel you should be warned. You do not want to fuse it this way, but I do use a heat gun, very gently. Now that you have a variety of complex backgrounds, add the story you want to tell through your imagery. I hope these techniques spark your creative curiosity and keep you working even on less inspired days. If you have any questions, email me at lesliegiuliani@mac.com. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.